Schizophrenia or any mental illness isn't something that people are looking for in their children. It's really the furthest thing from your mind. What you're always thinking is that your children are going through angst. They're in high school, they're developing, they're doing all kinds of things. He was doing really well. You know, he was very smart. He'd taken all kinds of tests and he was in line to go to university. And we sort of didn't look that far. And then all of a sudden we started to realize that a little bit of darkness was coming. And by darkness, I mean he wasn't communicating. He was staying very quiet in his room for long lengths of time. And then one night we were sound asleep and Greg came and knocked on our door. He said, "My God, turn off that radio. Why have you got that radio on so loud?" And my husband sort of got up and he looked at me and he said, "Pat, I think we need to go. I think we need to take him and have him looked at." So we got Greg to come in the car with us, which was not easy. He didn't want to go. He thought everything was fine. And we got to the hospital and we were there for maybe 4 or 5 hours, and a doctor came down the hallway and he looked at us and he said, "Well," he said, "your son has schizophrenia." In the beginning, when Greg was first diagnosed, I would say for the first 2 or 3 years, he accepted the fact that he had an illness and he was adamant about taking his medications. But Greg had an unfortunate incident where he was on a SkyTrain and he saw a young girl that was being harassed by some men on the SkyTrain. So Greg went over and he said, "Hey, you know, come on, leave her alone. Just leave her alone." And they beat him up very badly. So we were called to come to the hospital, actually, that he had been involved in this incident on the SkyTrain. And unfortunately, the police officer that was there asked Greg, "Are you taking any medications? Have you been diagnosed with anything?" Greg took this to mean, oh, if I have a mental illness, then they're not going to believe me. They're not going to trust me. They're not going to think I'm telling the truth. And that was the beginning of probably 23, 24 years of a fight to try to keep him online, try to keep him with his medications. Hence, there were times when we had to have him go to the hospital. We had to. He was a danger to himself at that point. So we had to find ways of getting him into the hospital. We've taken Greg to the hospital 9 times. 3 times he was actually admitted. The other 6 times were probably one of the most frustrating experiences of our lives, in that here we had an individual who was obviously in need of care and assistance. Involuntary treatment helped Greg, in that it was a way of getting him into the hospital, something that was absolutely needed. So involuntary means that the medical staff actually has a time, and there is a time frame for them to be able to look at the person holistically and to see what else is going on in their bodies. The problem with it is that it doesn't last long enough. A doctor can say, "I don't want him to leave. I want him to stay in the hospital." The nurse can say that, the psychiatrist can say that, and it can go to a panel because it's an involuntary admission into the hospital, and the panel can let him go. After, our paid professionals that work in this area are saying they want to keep this person in, they want to help this person more. And yet, Greg can request a panel and they can let him go from the hospital. This makes no sense to me. There's so many things that parents or loved ones have to do to ensure that your loved one is going to get the care that they need.